Tonight, large and dangerous. Hurricane Lee on track to hit the Maritimes. Nova Scotia and New Brunswick brace for impact as Lee gains speed.
Certainly, any kind of preparations should be completed.
Heavy rain, strong winds, and fears of widespread damage.
This is our livelihood, so if something happens to this.
An out-of-control hockey brawl.
They shouldn't be allowed to play hockey.
When tempers flare during a men's league game.
It's assault. It's assault with a weapon.
Plus, the legacy of Terry Fox.
The world went quiet when I heard those words, "You have cancer."
The marathon of hope and the fight against cancer.
I was able to keep my leg.
CTV National News with Omar Sachedina. Reporting tonight, Heather Wright.
Good evening. Thousands of people are in the path of Hurricane Lee tonight, the first major storm of the season to threaten Atlantic Canada. The storm is expected to pack winds of up to 120 kilometers an hour when it makes landfall tomorrow and could bring as much as 100 millimeters of rain to some areas. Those in Lee's path have been told to prepare for flash flooding, power outages, and pounding waves along the coast. While this storm is not expected to be as dangerous as Hurricane Fiona a year ago, officials say its strength should not be underestimated. CTV's Atlantic Bureau Chief Creason Ajkate starts us off.
Call it the calm before the storm. It may be sunny and warm in Digby, Nova Scotia today, but tomorrow Hurricane Lee will be at the province's doorstep.
I'm afraid of it. I live in a trailer, and I'm hoping that my trailer stays up.
Lee is expected to bring strong winds, flash flooding, and more coastal erosion. People here are grabbing enough food, water, medication, and fuel for 72 hours.
Just easy things to eat, like salad and pizza.
We just got food that won't go bad.
Jacqueline Como finished her storm preparations early. Got out to do some last-minute fishing before the storm arrives.
We're definitely going to lose power. So lots of candles. Peanut butter and jelly sandwiches.
Fishermen here are securing their boats as Lee is expected to bring 4 to 6 meter high waves.
If the wind comes out of here, there's going to be issues. And it sounds like right now it might.
In Barrington, on Nova Scotia's south coast, the threat level of high waves and coastal flooding is high.
Stony Island, Clam Point, and the south side there, those wharves are smaller wharves and hasn't had a lot of attention. So they could come apart.
Almost a year ago, Hurricane Fiona devastated the Maritimes. Nova Scotia Power has been making repairs since that storm, and this weekend they are sending crews to the potential hard-hit areas to fix any power outages quickly. Another concern, saturation levels are higher than normal and could create more challenges.
Trees will come down more easily than they normally would with, 90 to 100 kilometer-hour winds, which we will have along the coast.
The start of Hurricane Lee is expected to be felt as early as tonight, with the center of the storm likely hitting Yarmouth tomorrow afternoon. Heather.
All right, Creason, thank you. After Nova Scotia, the Bay of Fundy coastline is next in line with growing concerns of severe flooding. CTV's Heather Butts is in St. John tonight.
With Lee barreling towards New Brunswick, there's no doubt this coastline is about to take a beating. Storm surge coupled with high tide along the Bay of Fundy could be disastrous.
People can lose their homes. We could lose our roads and lose access.
Gary Prosser has lived here for 20 years. He's watched as storms roll in, taking parts of his shoreline out to sea.
In a bad storm, you can see over there, the waves are halfway up the bank and are crashing like an explosion. you have erosion taking effect and Mother Nature gnawing at the bank.
A concern for many living on the Bay of Fundy. Some buildings teetering on the edge. Entire towns sit right on the coast where people anxiously await Lee's arrival.
We're definitely keeping an eye on the tide because it does make a difference in, how concerned you might want to be.
Maritimers are bracing for intense winds. The trees still filled with leaves. Power companies are warning outages are likely and crews are standing by. In St. John, the city has been flooded by fierce storms in recent years. Low-lying neighborhoods with creeks that empty into the Bay of Fundy are troublesome.
When we get rain of that magnitude, the water just has nowhere to go. We need low tide cycles to be able to drain that to the Bay of Fundy.
The city has another problem on its hands with some staff on strike, including 911 operators.
We've got safety of people at risk. I'm just in a lot of ways shocked and surprised that 911 at least has not offered to come back to work to get us through this storm.
When asked if the city has enough operators for this weekend,
we don't know if we're going to be flooded with 911 or not. So, is there a risk there? Absolutely.
The worst conditions should last about 12 hours, but officials say rain and strong winds could batter some areas for 24 hours and perhaps even longer. Heather.
All right, Heather Butts in St. John for us tonight. The region is already feeling the effects of the storm. For more, let's bring in CTV meteorologist Kelsey McEwen. Now, Kelsey, walk us through the next 24 hours and what those in the path of this storm might expect.
Yeah, it's tonight, it's Saturday night that we're watching most closely as the storm moves its way northward, and it's picked up speed, so landfall is expected earlier on Saturday than we first thought. First for that south coast of Nova Scotia, and then crossing the Bay of Fundy, making landfall perhaps for a second time in New Brunswick, then swinging off to the northeast. Now, it starts as embedded thunderstorms tonight in Nova Scotia. We'll back into Prince Edward Island and New Brunswick. The rain will continue in earnest for southern Nova Scotia into Saturday, but there's times where the rest of the region may even see the rain stop. What will continue are very strong winds and that storm surge on the Atlantic coast of Nova Scotia. The rain continues for New Brunswick, for the Gaspé Peninsula, up along coastal Quebec, right as we head into Saturday night. And that's where we see this bullseye of rainfall totals, the highest rain on already saturated ground. For those strongest waves, what we're watching is high tide. We could see the strongest storm surge coincide with that high tide right as we head into Saturday evening. That will only further flooding concerns.
All right, a very active 24 hours. CTV's Kelsey McEwen, thanks so much for this. The death toll from flooding in Libya has now passed 11,000, with thousands more still missing. And now waterborne diseases and unexploded ammunition are complicating rescue efforts. CTV's Geneviève Boschman has more.
Sections of the port city of Derna were sealed off, access restricted to emergency workers. This as confusion and a lack of resources in the area have slowed recovery efforts. Today, the World Health Organization and the Red Cross urged Libyans to stop burials in mass graves.
Dead bodies per se are not, especially after a disaster like this, are unlikely to be a health risk.
Officials say bodies can contaminate fresh water supplies, but hasty burials leave families in anguish for years.
Bodies need to be documented and buried in labeled body bags. Graves need to be mapped so that there is record of who is buried there.
Search crews face escalating threats in nearly wiped out parts of the city, including the dangers of unexploded ammunition stirred up by Storm Daniel.
This is a country that suffered from obviously years of conflict and violence and the ripple effects of that protracted conflict.
And anger is growing at the government among survivors who watched waves storm their homes and wash away loved ones. My son, my daughter, her husband, and my grandchild are all missing, he says. We put a lot of blame on the authorities. They point to the collapse of two dams that residents say were poorly maintained for years. This is a news report from January 2020. It warned of a looming humanitarian disaster, a symptom of years of political dysfunction and division. But at Friday prayers, some spoke of rare moments of unity now. We appreciate how people stand with us from the east and the west, he says, and from outside Libya. Today, Canada announced $5 million in funding to humanitarian partners on the ground. That's in addition to contributions to a UN fund. Geneviève Beauchemin, CTV News, Montreal.
1 week after Morocco's deadliest earthquake in decades, the first Friday prayers were held. Worshippers gathered in makeshift spaces in remote areas as they struggle to get vital supplies. The government has pledged financial aid to reconstruct collapsed and damaged homes. Almost 3,000 people have been killed. A chilling confession was heard by an Ontario courtroom today from the man accused of deliberately killing a Muslim family with his truck. In the hours after the attack, Nathaniel Veltman admitted to a detective it was terrorism. CTV's Nick Paparella reports, and a word of caution, the details that follow are extremely disturbing.
Sitting in a London police interview room, Nathaniel Veltman admits he's rambling on and on, telling Detective Micah Bordeaux, "I'm not planning on pleading insanity. I want the world to know why I did what I did." He continued, "I killed a bunch of people, 4 by crashing into them. They were Muslim from their clothes." He said, "I decided this is it. I'm going to commit a terrorist attack. I wanted to give Muslims a taste of their own medicine." Veltman says once he turned 18, he got interested in politics and the Trump 2016 election. "That's the moment I discovered the media was dishonest. I went right down the rabbit hole." He said the media is deceiving the public that it's white people that are the violent ones. "It just filled me with anger, with such rage. Western governments don't defend my right to free speech." Veltman said he started a plan in March of 2021. "I don't think anybody would have any idea what I was planning. This was 100% politically motivated." He said he drove around on June 6, 2021 until he could find somebody. "I was just like, let's just do it." The Offsall family was walking along Hyde Park Road in West London when they were run over. A mother, father, daughter, and grandmother were killed. The lone survivor was a 9-year-old son who is now 11. Veltman pled not guilty to 4 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of attempted murder. At one point, Veltman tells the officer that he's taking online classes for school during COVID. He tells him it was like being in jail and that he was going insane. Veltman said the crash was very damaging to my soul, but that it's what I had to do. It was surprisingly easier than I thought as I put my foot to the pedal. Before it's over, he says, "I'm still a little shaken up by what I did." The accused says he was wearing a helmet and bulletproof vest at the time of the crash and had knives and a machete in his pickup truck. The Crown's case resumes on Monday. Nick Paparella, CTV News, London, Ontario.
Alberta's Premier spoke out for the first time since a major E.Coli outbreak in Calgary sent young children to hospital. Danielle Smith fought back tears as she promised action and financial assistance. Bureau Chief Bill Fortier reports.
Visibly emotional, Alberta's Premier addressed a daycare E. coli outbreak that's made hundreds of kids sick.
It's unimaginable pain, and I'm heartbroken by what these families are going through.
Besides words, she brought money, $2,000 for the family of each child whose daycare was shut down.
There you go, 4 rocks.
For parents like Danielle Redwood, whose son is now testing negative, the money will help cover expenses.
Definitely a step in the right direction. I know for my family, that is helpful.
That cash expected to flow quickly. Long-term, parents are looking for much more. A proposed class action lawsuit seeking at least $150,000 per child, plus other damages.
There's certainly precedent cases out there that would indicate that this kind of case is going to be successful.
This Edmonton lawyer has worked on cases involving other high-profile E. coli outbreaks, including a $4 million settlement after a tainted beef recall at XL Foods meatpacking plant in 2012. He says it's not just about financial compensation.
A lawsuit can get you, access to really what happened here. Why did this happen? How can it be stopped so it doesn't happen again?
The number of positive cases grew again today with 337 confirmed, but there are now only 12 children in hospital, half as many as last weekend. 6 are on dialysis.
We're somewhat heartened by the fact that it appears that the number of patients in hospital
has stabilized.
The kitchen believed to be at the center of the outbreak is still closed, the investigation ongoing. The Premier also announced a review today of all kitchens that serve multiple daycares to see if changes are needed to avoid similar outbreaks in the future. She hopes any legislative changes will be introduced in the spring. Heather.
Bill Fortier tonight. Thanks for this, Bill. Coming up, cross-border labor concerns.
You're very likely looking at partial shutdowns and idling of Canadian suppliers.
Could an historical U.S. auto strike pump the brakes on Canadian manufacturing? An historic strike at Detroit's Big Three automakers is being watched closely on this side of the border, with Canadian auto workers facing their own fast-approaching deadline. CTV's Allison Hurst explains.
Almost 13,000 U.S. auto workers have walked off the job.
Get this contract settled today so we can get our family fed.
In an historic simultaneous strike at the Big Three American automakers.
It feels good that we're actually out here standing up for what we deserve.
As soon as the midnight deadline passed, workers walked out, targeting 3 facilities, a Ford plant in Michigan, GM plant in Missouri, and an Ohio plant for Chrysler owner Stellantis.
We're ready for this strike to last as long as it takes.
Ford offered a 20% wage increase, the most in the company's history, but the union wants a 40% increase and better benefits.
So they waited till the last week to want to get down to business. Shame on them, and what they're saying is complete BS.
Negotiating isn't saying, here's the choice, pay everyone like I asked, and then you can go bankrupt. That's not a choice. That's not negotiating.
The job action is being watched carefully north of the border.
Of the $35 billion in parts that Canadian automotive suppliers ship every year, 48% of them go into the U.S. If we get into Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday, you're very likely looking at partial shutdowns and idling of Canadian suppliers.
It comes as Canada's Auto Workers Union is negotiating with Ford Canada. The union has rejected 2 offers, but they plan to be at the table all weekend.
Pensions, which is our #1 priority in these talks, and 2, what occurs during the EV transition and making sure we get this right and making sure our members are protected during that process.
The Unifor president sent a letter to UAW today saying, "We stand in solidarity with UAW members as you exercise your fundamental right to strike."
The UAW's militancy is likely to have a positive spillover effect for Unifor in the sense that it will help bolster that union's bargaining demands north of the border.
Where there's still hope, they'll strike a deal by Monday's deadline. Contract talks are set to resume in the U.S. tomorrow, while here at home, both sides plan to remain at the table through the weekend to try for a deal before the collective agreement expires Monday. Heather.
All right, Allison Hurst in Toronto tonight. Dozens of communities across Ontario will soon be losing their local newspaper. Metroland Media Group is laying off more than 600 people as it seeks bankruptcy protection. Metroland's parent company also owns the Toronto Star and Hamilton Spectator, but those papers won't be affected. Still ahead, ruckus at the rink.
It was like whack-a-mole. It was like, just like totally out of control.
A men's league melee shines a spotlight on sports violence. Some questions are being raised tonight about the amount of violence that is acceptable in sport. It comes after a nasty on-ice altercation this week in Toronto, where a men's rec league hockey game erupted into a full-blown stick-swinging brawl. Here's CTV's Adrian Gabriel.
A violent men's league melee.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Swinging their hockey sticks over their heads like a group of lumberjacks, multiple players violently chopped at each other as they spilled off of the ice, into the benches, and towards the bleachers.
A bunch of guys need to be banned for quite a while, I'd say.
We showed the video to multiple hockey players at an afternoon pickup game.
A stick to the neck can destroy someone's life.
The dangerous scene took place on a Monday night at a men's rec hockey game. The league is called the Adult Safe Hockey League.
There was no concern at all for safety of either their teammates or the opposing team. It was a little war.
Bruce Tennant is a hockey referee. He says these two teams were known as a problem by players in the ASHL.
In 45 plus years of refereeing, I've never seen anything like that.
The ASHL is owned by Canland Sports. More than 65,000 players play in its leagues across the country.
We play over 36,000 games per year in 12 cities across Canada and in the United States, as many games in 1 week as the National Hockey League plays in an entire season.
Speaking to CTV News, Canland CEO noted that incidents like this do arise, but rarely for a league their size, saying they've already completed a thorough investigation.
As a result, the two teams have been indefinitely suspended. Multiple players have been permanently expelled.
Canland Sports says, fortunately, no one has reported serious injuries.
Why was it important for you to speak up about this incident?
Because I think it looks bad on all of hockey. I hate to see people not get involved in hockey because they're afraid that this is a commonplace.
Toronto police tell us on the night of the incident they were never called, though if they open an investigation, they confirm that charges for assault with a weapon could be laid. Adrian Gabriel, CTV News, Toronto.
After the break, Terry Fox's legacy of life. Fundraising dollars making a difference. Terry Fox's run made him a Canadian hero. His legacy, a Canadian tradition, with runners across the country coming together to raise money for cancer research. Here's CTV's Vanessa Lee with the story of one young survivor and how Terry's legacy changed her life.
Cassandra Harding has been taking part in Terry Fox runs for as long as she can remember, never imagining she would one day share a connection with the Canadian icon.
The world went quiet when I heard those words, "You have cancer."
Harding was diagnosed with osteosarcoma last August at the age of 19, the same type of bone cancer that cut short Fox's marathon of hope.
What got you through the toughest moments? It's trying to stay positive. You know, I definitely had my down days, you know, but I didn't let them keep me down for too long and change the negatives into positives.
Fox had to have his leg amputated, but Harding's outcome was different thanks to progress in cancer treatment.
The doctor said to me, if this was 10 years ago, you would have lost your leg. There was no doubt about it.
She is sharing her story to raise awareness so people can see that fundraisers have a direct effect and change lives. Harding is now in remission, but weeks after she finished chemotherapy, her 18-year-old sister Caitlin started treatment for the same type of cancer.
What were you walking for today? Solely my sister. My sister, I have her in my heart. She's my rock. She's my best friend. And I wish she could be here with me today.
Despite pain in her left leg, Harding pushed through the nearly 4-kilometer walk.
Go, Cassie!
Returning to a hero's welcome at the high school she graduated from 3 years ago.
I'm so proud of her. She is tough, tough, tough. It was really hard for all of us at the school. She really made an impact on a lot of, besides the students, a lot of the staff.
A young survivor who refuses to back down as she tackles the journey ahead, one step at a time. Vanessa Lee, CTV News, Pointe Claire, Quebec.
What an inspiration. That's it for us this Friday. I'm Heather Wright for Omar and all of us at CTV National News. Thank you for watching.